Finance and Property Committee to order. First item is public comment period. I know we have a couple of people. Chuck, you want to come on up?
I'll use the sign-in from you for the minutes, so if you want to make sure that you put your name on there, then you've got it for the record. Okay, great.
Okay, do you want to just give one to, well, she's got one, okay. I think the rest are remote, so some of them may be coming in tonight.
We have Vice Chair Leahy, Supervisor McEwen, Supervisor John, and Supervisor
And Chair Gibbs had indicated that he would be a few minutes late due to another committee meeting, so. Chuck, either, you can do either one, whichever one you're more comfortable with. This one or, is it on? No.
Sorry, I'm back to you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to come and just speak for a few moments. I was asked by Mr. Leonard to...
Before we start, just for the
Go ahead.
record, could you identify
sorry.
yourself?
Yes, Chuck Gadorzy. I am Executive Director for Wausau Opportunity Zone. Thank you. Mr. Leonard asked me to speak a little bit about the South Riverfront. So I thought I'd put together just a little presentation relative to the vision that we have relative to the community in large. The packet that I put before you, I'll just go through it briefly in terms of some of the pages. But the first illustration just under the cover shows the fact that we're looking at not only the downtown, which is the Wausau Opportunity Zone target area, but also a comprehensive plan that would go all the way from Athletic Park all the way down to Thomas Street, and obviously what is being visualized for the South Riverfront. If you turn to the second page, it kind of has an illustration of what we're looking at in terms of a transition relative to coming from the mall area down to the South Riverfront, and how that development kind of moseys on through, if you would, the mall area and the development that's occurring or will be occurring on the mall. When we started this process, we looked at what were the qualifications of some of the upper tier cities in the country, and we put those qualifications down, and we kind of have been talking about Wausau as being the best small city in America and what the qualifications of those cities are. If you look at the first two, a vibrant downtown is number one, and an engaging riverfront district is number two, i.e. the South Riverfront, the North Riverfront, and the opportunity that we have in those areas. The county, the city, put together a plan which we call the Greater Wausau Prosperity Partnership. And if you look through there, there's a number of, obviously, folks who have been participating in terms of a plan that would create for our county a strategic plan for economic growth. There's three areas in that economic growth that are targeted. Talent is number one, innovative companies is number two, and then placemaking is number three. Placemaking is developing this environment, if you would, where talent and innovative companies want to grow, people want to live and invest, et cetera, and raise their families. Now, when we were putting together that plan, we obviously had quite a bit of background, and on the second page of this booklet, I've entitled kind of our playbook. And our playbook has been previous studies that have been done, and there's a number of them. We've only picked a few of them. But the Greater Wausau Prosperity Plan kind of targeted to be a comprehensive plan, if you would, that would allow us to create this environment in our downtown, which they were seeking after. South Riverfront then, and there's an illustration, just a few pages on that. The South Riverfront master plan was developed by neighborhood partners. A plan in which it calls for the creation of a new street. And in that new street, it calls for the creation of a Four Seasons farmers market, along with residential, along with perhaps some hotels or other uses, if you would, for the South Riverfront. That plan is one in which we're here to talk to you a little bit tonight in terms of asking you and encouraging you as the county to come alongside of us, which you have already, but to come alongside of us and to find a new home, if you would, for the activities that are in the current 3 buildings.
Excuse me, Mr. Gazorzi. I have some people that are not on mute, so please mute yourselves at this time.
Thank you. I'll just be a few more minutes. Thank you. So if you look at the illustration that's in the Neighborhood Planners Development Plan, it kind of illustrates how we're looking at the South Riverfront as a community in terms of its future and how it can embrace this comprehensive plan. The Chamber and Dave Ekman, the Executive Director of the Chamber, WGDP, and WAS is with me as well tonight. And there's been a lot of forward movement in terms of what has been happening. More specifically, the powerhouse, which is the WPS powerhouse, has been placed under a 40-year lease by the Chamber. The Chamber has also purchased a depot in which they'll be looking to move their new offices in. So much is happening, if you would, on Clark Island. And the connection to Clark Island across what is a world-renowned kayak course in that whole area down there holds a great opportunity, if you would, for our county, for our residents, for our city moving forward. And so my encouragement tonight is that you would advance that relatively quickly. We are not looking at this as being a long-term process in terms of how we're going to advance forward as GWPP. So we encourage you as well to kind of move along with us. Thank you.
What does that mean in terms of a time frame?
In terms of the time frame, we've talked somewhere around 12 to 18 months. We are looking to do more, if you would, with our Clark Island, with the powerhouse, with our innovation center. We're also looking to do more in terms of our pedestrian transition bridge that will come right down to South Riverfront, and the need for this Four Seasons farmers market that can be an encouragement relative to some of the economic impact. So moving in terms of 12 to 18 months so that those buildings could be raised and repurposed for the land would be somewhere that we're on, the timetable we're on.
Just to, again, so we've got a common understanding, so you would look to a 12 to 18 month period for the purposes of raising, having the property cleared or title to the property?
I don't know how title of the property will work.
Access to the property.
Yeah, the access to the property where the repurposing for the community could occur.
In light of the fact that this is going to affect some of our discussions later in the meeting, typically we don't ask questions in the public comment period, but I would ask members of the committee if you have questions of Chuck, go ahead and ask them.
John, this is Craig.
Go ahead, Craig.
I don't have the handout. What property are they looking at acquiring?
The property that the county currently has on the South Riverfront that incorporates 3 buildings, if you would, that have county uses in them. That would be the area that is targeted relative to the four-season farmers market, and also the area where the pedestrian walkway will be coming down.
So you're referring to like 212 River Drive and the other buildings next to them?
That'd be correct.
Thank
We
you.
have some extra copies.
Yes,
We'll put,
I can get it to you. Very good.
are there any other questions? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, did you want to, anybody else wish to make a public comment? Anybody else wish to make a public comment? If not, we will move on then to the approval of the minutes of the August 10th meeting. What are your wishes?
McEwen to approve.
Fisher to second.
Moved by McEwen, seconded by Fisher to approve the minutes. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of approval of the minutes will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. We're going to, Fisher, McEwen and Fisher. We're going to defer the bug tussle conduit bonding proposal until Chair Gibbs gets here. He had indicated again that he has a North Central Healthcare Nursing Home Committee meeting. So we'll wait with that. We'll jump on to the National Telecommunications and Information Administration grant and other grants, just by way of updates to let you know. We submitted last week the grant with Charter for serving the eastern and central part of the county, with the county being the applicant and partnering with them. It is similar to the proposal that was submitted to the Wisconsin Public Service Commission in July, same service area. And we are hopeful that we'll hear something on that grant sometime this fall. In addition, there were, for the Wisconsin Public Service Commission grants, there were 9 applications in Marathon County for the ARPA dollars, and there were a total of $438 million of requests for chasing $100 million. So obviously not all of them will be funded, but we'll remain optimistic that some of them will be. That's what we continue to monitor what Charter and LTD are doing with the Rural Development Opportunity Funds, where they've been selected by the Federal Communications Commission to extend services, and primarily in the northern, immediately north of Wausau, in the western side of the county, gigabyte service. That could be up to a 10-year period of time. We'd like to try to accelerate that if we could and work with them. And I know that there are a number of discussions with other internet service providers about how they can collaborate in that area. But that's it in terms of the updates. But we did submit the application. Lance was the signature. Michael reviewed it. We will eventually, if the award is given, need to work out a formal memorandum of agreement between Charter and the county, clarifying roles and responsibilities. We had some concerns over some of the language, but it was required as part of the grant application relative to the county's role in guaranteeing financial or guaranteeing that the project meets its financial goals. So we will work on that as part of the agreement should the project be funded. Any questions? Right now, we'll be sharing with you updates on a regular basis. All right. The American Rescue Plan update. We received 19 survey results through the webpage in the survey, and there were in excess of 25 people that attended the 3 public meetings 3 in Edgar, approximately 10 in this room, and 14 in Hatley, providing us with a lot of feedback. We've begun the process of summarizing and trying to capture what the themes were. And we had a number of themes. We have captured the ones that were online. We just haven't captured all of the notes because Lance was a note taker and he's on vacation this week. All of the themes that were shared at the 3 public meetings. We will have a summary of those for you at the next meeting. Sarah is working on them, but we asked a number of questions of how has it affected you? What would recovery look like? What criteria should we use? And there was a 4th question. How should local units of government work together and collaborate? And then there was a general comment section. We received some comments that were unrelated to the ARPA dollars, including comments on the Community for All resolution. I think people are just looking for ways to provide comments. Ranging from send the money back to the feds to raising issues of access to childcare, helping businesses that were distressed, broadband expansion, a good number on broadband, particularly from local elected officials, as well as infrastructure and other programs. So what we'll do is provide that summary to you. I know that we still have a couple of people formalizing their request. There are some meetings later this week where others are putting forth proposals for our consideration. But we will be looking at what sort of criteria we should apply to them. And Christy has pulled up, I pulled out from a number of sources, information, sort of fundamental and background information relative to the use of the funds, but we will need to establish criteria before we can develop a plan. So I think what we're going to be looking for from the context of moving forward, what criteria do we want to apply toward the use of those dollars? Obviously, we need to be consistent with what the U.S. Treasury requirements are and what their guidelines say. Christie and others have to certify the funds are used for eligible purposes, and if they're not used for eligible purposes, we will be required to pay them back, and we'd have to dip into tax levy or reserve to do that, so we want to make sure we're there. We are also limited by, they have to be consistent with state statutes. There's a good amount of discussion that has taken place at the Wisconsin Counties Association leadership meetings on a weekly basis. And there's, we can do what the feds funds, but the state law allows. And so we don't fully understand what that might be, but we put in the packet some of the criteria. The funds on the state level, they can't be used directly or indirectly to offset tax reductions or delay tax increases. And the funds can't be deposited in pension funds. They also can't be used for legal services. But the Department of Revenue points out that these are temporary in nature. And so we should really avoid creating new programs and add-ons to existing programs that will require ongoing financial commitments. The whole concept of sustainability. If we start it, we need to be able to carry it beyond the period of time where the ARPA funding is available. And later in the meeting, we'll be talking a little bit about net new construction and the impacts that might have on our budget, but that's basically the amount of new money we have each year, and if we commit that to new programs, we won't be able to fund core services that are dependent upon the property taxes going forward. They also say that we may need to, if we look at this from a lost revenue perspective and spend the money to replace lost revenue, we may have to have additional budget restraint to achieve and maintain structural balance in future budgets. So if we look back at the last few years, we want to make sure that if we capture, one of the eligible activities is capturing lost revenue. If we apply that to our budget, we need to make sure at the end of the time of the application of those funds that we haven't created a hole that we can't get out of, again, similar to the new programs. They point out that investments in critical infrastructure is well-suited for ARPA, and there are limits on where that infrastructure investments can be made to sewer and water projects, as well as broadband. But they also stress that there's a need to assess any ongoing operating costs associated with those investments. Let's see if you want to scroll that down. One. And we've talked about the need to coordinate with other funding sources. There's a need for us to, before we start spending our money, to look at whether or not some of the other pots of money might be available to us to fund those activities. For instance, the state of Wisconsin put $100 million into the ARPA Public Service Commission broadband grants. If we're successful in getting those may be able to either supplant or supplement our dollars, but we need to be aware of where they're going. In addition, if the Senate infrastructure bill passes, there's $65 billion in there for broadband. We'd want to try to capture some of those dollars. $50 billion of that will be going in directly distributed to local governments, 80% of that on a formula basis, and 20% through other methods. But we want to make sure that we pay attention to other activities. The cities, villages, and towns all have received an amount of money, and when you look at the county, we received $26 million. They'll receive an approximately equal amount. That we want to make sure we can collaborate with them and look at where schools and others might have access to funding. So we want to use those dollars, those first. We have to commit the dollars by December 31st of 2024, but we have to fully spend them by December 31st of 2026. So we can incur or encumber those funds, and so that we want to be careful to make sure we pace ourselves. We don't want to rush out there and spend all the money right away, only to find out that we don't have money left over for some critical needs later. And it's just, I put in there that based upon what the Department of Treasury had put out, that rating agencies will evaluate a government's use of the ARPA funds in determining our creditworthiness and how does it affect our budget and other things. So those are just some of the things we want to keep in mind. And then from a nonprofit group, they put down other factors. One of the things they want to make sure is that that funds go for COVID-related harm, basically to address economic harm resulting from or exacerbated by the pandemic. Some of the comments we received was helping small businesses, giving loans to small business under 20 employees, helping them get going again. So those are some of the things that we can consider. How would we help nonprofits or others? There were requests for helping with the homeless, child care, and others. Proportional assistance funding must be reasonably proportionate to the extent and type of harm experienced. There has to be a relationship between our use of those funds and how we do spend the money. But we also want to make sure that we're factoring in local conditions and local data when we move forward. So, I think we've got the guts of criteria that we don't want to create new programs that we can't carry over. We want to be consistent with the guidelines and the statutes. We want that sustainability. We want to make sure that we can do it in a timely manner. Are there any other criteria that you think we should be, applying to our use of those dollars? So again, we'll develop the criteria, then we'll look at what the options are and try to score it accordingly. Any other criteria that you think you might want? This was added to the packet this afternoon, so if you updated the packet, it would be there. But again, we just want to start the discussion. It's not an end-all. We'll be continually modifying that criteria based upon updated treasury guidance. And as we saw with the CARES dollars on the state level, those guidance are updated on a regular basis and clarified on a regular basis. Any questions, thoughts?
Chair Robinson, Supervisor Fisher here.
John?
I actually think, to be honest, that is a excellent wrap up already, considering the fact that there's still some outstanding issues that the Treasury Department hasn't notified us about yet. So I think when you're talking criteria in regards to spending those dollars, that's already a pretty hefty criteria to manage through. So I in my opinion, that's on an excellent start.
Any other thoughts? Well, then what we'll do is, I'm working with Sarah, with us, and I imagine Christy will be involved, and probably Mike. We'll try to develop those criterias in sort of if you, for lack of a better term, a ranking criteria, so that we could look at how we might apply those to requests and categories when they come in. Bring that back at the next meeting. We'll also have that completed summary of the comments that we received. One of the areas that we encourage citizens to, or one of the vehicles we encourage them to communicate through, was contacting county board supervisors directly. And Sarah and I were going over the list, and we're just wondering, have any of you heard from your constituents or others relative to how they want to see the ARPA dollars funded outside of the public meetings? And the reason I
No, not particularly.
The reason I asked that question, we were debating whether or not we should have a form for the county board supervisors to fill out, capturing those constituent thoughts, understanding that the county board members all have ongoing opportunities to comment on how those funds are going as we move through that process. But we want to make sure we get all the citizens' input up front. So Jonathan, you've said no. Allison? Others? You're saying?
Heard it, John, either. You know, we talked about those funds that the village of Rothschilds received, 500 and some thousand, but nothing to do with the county. But that would be a good discussion. I could maybe bring that up at a village board meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Well, then we'll go ahead.
Sorry, Supervisor Leahy, I haven't seen anything specifically come through my email.
Yee, have you heard anything? Silence is golden. But, you know, again, we will continue to take input from people all the way through this process, because we've got our first tranche, as they call it, of 13 million this year. We'll get another 13 million next year. We'll, I think, be deliberate but not rush to make decisions. And we've got a period of time in which we can commit those dollars to make them meaningful. We want to make sure if there are critical needs, we get those dollars out sooner than waiting. If we've got distressed, segments of the economy or citizenry that need that help, but we'll move ahead. Any other thoughts on that? If not, we will move ahead. I've lost my agenda in my paper. So the next item would be discussion of preliminary assumptions, general estimates, net new construction, equalized valuation. Christie?
All right, first off, what I have here is just, we have started the revenue loss assumptions for ARPA money, and it has to be through the full previous year prior to the pandemic, and then it would be comparison between that year and the next year with the growth factor of 4.1% based on general revenues, and for anything after, I believe it's March 3rd of 2021. So what we did is we started that worksheet, and I'm just going to show you a little bit about it. These are not held in stone, but we do overall have a reduction in revenues based on our financial, audited financial statements from 19 and 20. I don't know why that keeps popping up. I'm clicking. And these are just put in allocation. We received several different types of spreadsheets to use as a template from the Wisconsin Counties Association, the Government Finance Officers Association. This is the one that was provided by WCA. And rolling to the bottom, you can see our overall revenue increase is a little over 2%, and our trend is 4.1. So we'll eliminate COVID-related grants and other grants that are not qualifying in there, but we just, from a snapshot, look like we will have some eligible revenue loss that we can use going prospectively forward in future years. But again, as Chair Robinson said, they cannot be used for debt service, rainy day funds, pension payments, and the like, such as that. So this is just a preliminary one, and as we get into the 2022 budget, we'll be working on that a little bit more as well.
So, Christy, from the lost revenue perspective as it relates to the ARPA, you're still working with North Central Healthcare?
Yes, thank you. We had our initial meeting on Monday with the North Central Healthcare Center, and they're going to be doing a similar exercise to this at this time. And then the big question is, based on the Treasury guidance, the county is the one that was awarded ARPA funds. So how, A, do we calculate the general revenue loss for them? And secondly, if we determine there is one, how do we claim that we can use those funds in future years' budgets? So we're going through the numbers as you see on the presentation for them, and then we'll continue to look at the guidance to see how that works based on them being a part of 3 different counties, but yet a government that was created by all 3 of us as well.
Are there any questions on, as it relates to the lost revenue? So it's still very much a work in progress, and that will need to be updated on an annual basis as we get that net new construction to look at where our revenues are relative to the 4.1% increase. So that's one of the reasons why you don't want to rush into too many decisions on the use of the ARPA dollars.
Hey, John, just a question.
Go ahead.
Thanks, John. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Christy, I know the tentative report is due by the end of this month. Do we have to allocate what we know is going to be, what I've understood, the reporting requirement, we have to allocate what portion of potentially the first tranche of funds, the $13 million that is available for lost revenue? Do we have to put that on the first preliminary report?
I will have to take a look. We're just working on getting ourselves in the applications to report at this time. If we do, which I do have estimates because I'm not showing you the dollar amounts, but I'm just showing you the percentages. Our biggest issue is that we don't know in the guidance where we can find how to deal with a other governmental entity created by the state statutes that allows for us to receive their revenues. So we have a number we can use as an estimate for the plan if that's needed, but we don't have one that would incorporate North Central Healthcare's amounts as well at this time. But my understanding, it's basically what your plan is so far and if you've had any actual expenditures.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions relative to the lost revenue?
John, this is Craig.
Go ahead.
The 4.1%, is that for everyone, or is that just the criteria Marathon County uses?
It's the federal guidelines that establish the 4.1, or it's within your states. There could be other factors, but they would be state specific. but 4.1
Thank you.
is the guidance.
Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, now that Kurt is here, we'll go back to the bug tussle presentation. So Steve, if you'd like to come forward, and we have Steve Schneider, the president of Bug Tussle. We were having trouble with that one working. You can come up here too if you want.
Thanks for having me to talk a little bit about the proposal we've made to Marathon County. We've been around since 2003, providing broadband to rural areas. A couple of items that I'd like to just say up front that are part of our objectives. And number one is to get broadband that is good for video to as many people as quickly as possible. And that was fixed wireless. It's sort of fallen out of being in with some of the guidelines, but it is still the quickest way of getting 25 meg to 100 meg out to customers in rural areas. Fiber is more future-proofed, so we are looking at options for fiber. We've designed a roughly 200-mile fiber optic route throughout Marathon County that includes last-mile fiber, meaning that fiber will go to homes at 1 gigabit or greater. We are probably switching our technology from our initial proposal to something called TXPS because we can get about 10 gigabits per second in the long haul. And it doesn't cost a whole lot more than GPON, which gets us 1 gigabit per second. Part of our goal is, before the pandemic and before the ARPA money, was to do this utilizing some assistance from the county, but it not costing the county anything. In fact, being a net positive to the county. And we have not shifted from that because we think that it's important for the projects that we do to be sustainable. So part of our project is building a number of fixed wireless towers that will serve a dual purpose. We've been criticized by some citizens, particularly in Marathon County, for doing cellular and fixed wireless on the same assets. We think that that's a wise thing to do because a lot of people don't realize the difference even between cellular and fixed wireless. We believe that there's a need for both of those. We've had parts of the state that we've built and people have been upset saying, well, my cellular didn't get any better. And you know, thinking that cellular is broadband. So just the definition of broadband, I think, requires some level of clarity. So that is step one, is getting service to as many people as quickly as possible. Step two is, with getting that service out there, there becomes a need for higher capacity aggregation points. And what we're doing is we're putting in a technology called DWDM, Dense Wave Division Multiplexing, which basically uses light waves that get 200 gigabits per second. It's software upgradable to 800 gigabits per second. We're putting in 144 fiber. Of those fiber, 72 would be used for the backbone. Of the other 72, 24 would be given to the county for government purposes, and the remaining 48 would be used for fiber to the home with the 1 to 10 gigabit per second service. We have what we're calling rural open access design, basically indicating that other people that get grants or other folks that want to connect into our network, we're publishing our network versus some of our competitors who may want to keep you from knowing what that internet, where their fiber is, where their facilities are. We want people to connect in. We're indicating that we're open to that and will make our network accessible. We also, with that backbone, would be covering about 2,000 homes with direct fiber to the home. We're also looking at maybe redesigning some little things. We have some meetings set up here to get some input from various folks on maybe going to all of the town halls. We're trying to pass as many cell towers, which tend to be aggregation points, schools, anything that the community considers something critical to have connected with a fiber backbone. We also do education in the community. We have a little marketing thing called Bug Tussle University, where we provide courses on artificial intelligence. We have a professor from St. Norbert College that's been doing online sessions for us on artificial intelligence, automation. We've done courses on how to use the internet effectively for your small business. We've done things on computers for seniors, cloud computing, and we think that, you know, part of it is having access in the community, but part of it is also working with the community so that the community knows what you can do with that access once it's here. Finally, we also try to coordinate as much cellular on the fixed wireless towers that we do. We work extensively with AT&T, so we have right now 14 cell towers that we've proposed to AT&T in Marathon County. That approval process can take anywhere from 2 days to 4 years, depending on how important it is to AT&T. We also have agreements with T-Mobile, Verizon, and soon, hopefully, Dish Network with the wireless network that they're rolling out. One of the things that I find interesting is when we started talking, there weren't a whole lot of folks interested, and in the last grant application, there were 9 companies, I believe John said. You know, the other thing that is often a question that I get asked is, well, you know, once you open the door, won't there be a lot of competitors, and are you prepared for that? And I think that's really part of our purpose is often if there isn't at least a competitor, people aren't motivated to do the best for the community. And I think that we've experienced where we come in, typically there's a bunch of other people that come in right behind us, which is good for the community. But I don't mind that because it requires us to be better. It requires them to be better. I think it's good for everyone. So the ask of Marathon County that we have is we've been putting together a sizable bond offering and trying to keep the offering costs of that bond offering low by sharing it between many different counties. We have a county that has agreed to be the lead county, so they would be the issuer of the bonds. They're what are considered conduit bonds, meaning that the bonds pass from the issuing county to us, and we're responsible for the payment. But one of the things we're looking for is to get a lower interest rate than we could get issuing commercial paper, which the county has the ability to get based on revenue bonds. So part of that process is that the county would provide what we call a backdrop guarantee. It's really a guarantee to replenish the debt service fund if we ever defaulted on it. And we've been doing this since 2012. We had another bond offering that we did for Fond du Lac and Adams County in 2012. We're using the exact same language and documents actually that we used in that. In the last 10 years, we have never missed a payment. The bonds were initially rated BB2 and went up to AA1 over the years because the projects were completed on time and the projects were completed on budget, and and we never missed a payment of the replenishment of the debt service fund. So what that basically means is when we do this bond, it's a 30-year bond. We make monthly payments of principal and interest. During the construction period, which is the first 3 years, those interest and principal payments are imputed into the bond issuance. So until we're producing revenue. Now, we reflect that we're going to actually be producing revenue this year yet off of the fixed wireless, and next year off of the fiber, and then significant coming from both by year 3 of this, which gives us a head start and an incentive to actually build up the debt service fund before any payments are due. And then there is a year of debt service set aside that is set aside up front. So it's only if we would default for 12 months, which means the county really has 4 years to evaluate us. What we're providing to the county in exchange for that is the 24 dark fibers for the county's use. We're providing space on all of the towers that would be built under this program for antennas that the Sheriff's Department or Emergency Management or any county entity would want to use. We set aside 1 space on the towers. We also pay 40 basis points for your guarantee. That means we would be paying the county $1.55 million over the course of the bond. So what's the downside to the county? The downside to the county is the risk that you have that we would default and you would have to make current payments into the debt service fund. All of the assets that are built, the county has as collateral. The bondholder's collateral is the county's guarantee of the debt service fund. The county gets all of our assets in the county as collateral. So again, you know, I don't anticipate an end of the world scenario. Right now, we're highly profitable. We had $65 million in revenue last year. We had $19 million in net income. And as I indicated, over a 10-year period with Fond du Lac County, we never missed a payment. So I think we have a good history. Fond du Lac County is the issuer for this bond, so they have agreed to issue up to $240 million in bonds. And then there's an intergovernmental agreement between the counties where we're building it, and you guarantee the portion in your county and between Fond du Lac County. Since it would all be issued under one issuance, it saves literally millions of dollars on the issuance costs because you're using one attorney, you're using, you know, one set of documents, you're going through the whole process once, you're using one underwriter. Our underwriter would be UBS, and the co-underwriter is Baird. Baird is primarily issuing in the upper Midwest. UBS has large clients that are interested in these types of offerings, so they feel very optimistic that the bonds would sell quite quickly. So before I go any further, any questions just on the process or what we're trying to accomplish? This is a very quiet committee.
Well, I think they've heard it, but just by way of filling in, next week, Jerry Klein will be meeting with Steve and his folks, technical staff, to look at the routing, to make sure that we're capturing as many of those critical buildings as possible. So we're involved in it. There are a number of other issues that we'll be working through.
We've requested a $2.347 million grant from the state's broadband expansion grants, where they use the $100 million of ARPA funds. That money would reduce the bond issuance if we receive those, but our business plan is not contingent upon getting that money, so we would like to proceed with or without that. It just basically reduces our risk and the risk to the counties. I included in the packet that I think you received this afternoon basically a 30-year That's a sample resolution. Oops. This chart that was in your packet shows the amount of outstanding bond. The amount in blue on here is the amount that would be paid each year to the county for their guarantee. We have some counties that put that in the general fund. We have some counties that set it aside for specific purposes. I think Fond du Lac County is looking at setting it aside for basically a pool for raises that they haven't granted due to tight budget in the past, and that they're looking at. I think Wausau is looking at it to basically subsidize their emergency communications network. What I also put in here is some of the customer projections that we have, how many fiber companies, customers, the revenue that we're getting, and off to the far right, if we can maybe go up a couple notches, yep, and so you're gonna see, let's see, is that the top? Oh, there. So you can see that our net operating cash flow, even the first year, is a positive number. Now that's partially because we're not making debt payments until year 4. You can see when we get to year 4 in that last column, we have about negative, that's fine, negative 800,000 for 1 year, negative 374, and we have the financial capacity to handle that, and then from there it tends to be very positive. Again, you know, we look at this as a very sustainable project. We intend to make money on it, so I don't want the county to have to subsidize something that we're ultimately making money on, and we feel good about contributing to the county through the term of this in several ways. You know, the other thing is some of the services we provide are sales taxable. So the sales tax over the term of this is about $500,000 in incremental sales tax on the county side, and about $5 million on the state side. I'm going to back up for a second to some maps that just give you an idea of the maps. I have a lot of information in here that you may just want to review on your own, but okay, I'm going to look for the one that has that one. So this gives you an idea of where the fiber route goes. It would connect into other adjacent counties. The overall statewide design that we have means you can get in and out of the state with approximately 20 to 30 fiber cuts at a time, which means it's extremely durable because each county has a ring, but then each county has at least 4 other rings that they're a part of. So if all of 3 of the 4 counties that Marathon County is connected to have an earthquake and all of their fiber is connected, you still have 2 other ways out of the county through a fourth county that we have a ring on. Similarly, all of our fixed wireless we build on multiple rings where they drop into fiber at a site that's on the ring, and then they're ringed, and there's a shared site between 2 rings. So again, it requires 4 losses of service to actually lose service to an end user. On this particular map, the red and blue dots are proposed sites. Some of the blue ones, excuse me, we were building for cellular purposes as well. Some of those will be turned up for service in the next several months. So before the end of this year, we will have some of our fixed wireless in Marathon County on the air. The red ones are the ones included in the latest grant application. The light blue ones are existing AT&T cellular towers. So we are supplementing or using those on a temporary basis until we have fiber to the home. The goal would be within 7 years that everybody in Marathon County has fiber to the home. Now, I say that very loosely with a big disclaimer there because that's a lot of money. It takes a lot of people to put that fiber in. We did a little bit of homework on this, and to put fiber to every home in Marathon County is about $107 million. Now, we're counting that TDS is putting fiber into some homes. Frontier has fiber going into some homes. AT&T is looking at Marathon County to take fiber to some homes. Charter has fiber to a number of areas. Serenity, Wittenberg Telephone Company has fiber to a number of areas. So, but that's what would be required if one individual provider did that. Our goal is to fill in the holes where nobody else is going, and then also act as the aggregator for other providers.
Steve, just a quick question there, because we had heard the figure of 200 million to extend service throughout the county. Do you know the difference? Is that because of the expansion of fiber?
That the difference is there are already quite a few homes serviced with fiber in the county. So I've got two numbers, 221,864 includes those that already have fiber, and then 107 million is those that don't have fiber. And that 107 also counts on the RDOF winner providing 38 million. So the net deficiency after existing networks, RDOF, what we're proposing, and areas where we believe existing carriers have already committed is about 75 million. I think I have a couple extra of this sheet, but this provides that summary in that section. So you're right, John. I probably should have said 221 million for every home if we were starting from scratch. But since we're not starting from scratch, it's probably half that. And then there's already some commitments on that half.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions or comments? Or things you'd like to hear more about? Or you'd like me to go back to Green Bay?
So the purpose of bringing Steve here today is to begin the process. And at the September 7th meeting, we will have the initial resolution, which Mike has reviewed and found it to be acceptable. And you bounce it off of bond counsel, and they have in turn reviewed it. So we will be looking to start the process. Steve will be making presentations to, again, this committee, and multiple other committees over the next month to make sure that they're all on board. But we will need a vote at the September 21st meeting of the county board on the initial resolution to advance it in time for it to be considered and lumped in with Fond du Lac County. We have, by the way, done something similar to this. Kurt and I were around when it happened. I think Craig was with the Foremost facility down in Rothschild, where there were industrial revenue bonds used for that facility, where it was done jointly with, I believe, Appleton at that time. So we have a precedent for doing this in the county's past.
And the formal process, normally there's one or more committees that present it to the county board. The county board then issues an initial resolution, which still does not commit the county. And then within 30 days, there needs to be a final resolution, and there's a TEFRA hearing in there as well, generally right before the final resolution. And it does require a 3/4 vote because it is a use of the county's general obligation limits.
This is Jerry Klein. Could I ask Steve a question?
Go ahead.
Steve, you have there's a slide about 3 after the map that you just had up with the fiber loop.
Okay.
There's a slide that is a table. It's got a white background. in the
Okay.
slide.
Yes.
Could
Yes.
you go over that a little bit and talk about that? It looks to me like what it is it's the wireless towers on the top and then fiber on the bottom, but I'd like you to go through that a little bit if you could.
Sure, sure. So we have 18 sites that we included in the grant application. Some of those we're already proceeding with, again, with or without grants. Our software does not track households, it tracks population covered. So we have a radio frequency mapping system that takes the radio signal from site 1 and identifies 1,166 people that are reached. Now, the average household in Marathon County is 2.41 people, and the Public Service Commission was tracking it by households. So to get the households with an RF platform, because the RF is generally for cellular and you don't care if it's a household or an individual walking down the street. So this just basically ties out the grant application and the households to the number of people covered. So building all 18 of the fixed wireless sites would be 35,314 covered people, which is about 14.6 thousand residences.
And that would assume, just for the rest of the group, that would assume that they all took the product that was offered to them, right? So
That would assume
Just wanna
that
make sure.
they subscribe to the product. We obviously can't force people to subscribe. It's if they want it, need it, if, there's other competitors out there. But, we look at it sort of as, can you, check off that all of these residents have access to service if they chose to subscribe to it. Down at the bottom, we look at the fiber, and we're going past 1,189 residences, and then we also have a number that are adjacencies. So if we come up to a corner and within a half a country block there's 25 homes, we're going to go that half a country block and fill those in. So in a lot of cases, the adjacencies are going through a village or an area that has a population out in a rural area where there's a concentration of 10, 15, 20 homes in a valley. When you look at the, I'm going to have you go to the very last slide, please. If you look at the map that has the homes on it, you can see that there are locations here that, if we're taking our fiber down Highway A, when we get to the left of the Highway A sign, you see 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 homes that are all within, a couple hundred feet of Highway A. We're going to cover all of those homes as part of it, even though they're not counted for directly on the route. And, those dollars are dollars that we're paying above and beyond the fiber in the project. But, frankly, if we have 8 people that are paying us, $62 a month for service, $500,000, $6,000 a year, and it's going to cost us maybe $15,000 to take service in there, our return on that is almost immediate.
thank you. That's what I wanted covered.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Anything on the financials or anything else related to the plan? If not, Steve, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
We look forward to continued discussions. All right, without objection, I'm going to jump to the HR component of the meeting because we've got Jim and Molly sitting here that would free them up. So without objection, we'll go to the 2021 new budget positions, the abolish of the maintenance manager in the highway department and create the deputy director effective November 1st, and then create the .6 FT accounting specialist effective November 1st. Molly, are you going to lead this discussion? Or Jim?
positions. So I just wanted to set the stage here. We had a batch of these similar requests come through at the August 10th meeting. This one was unfortunately miscategorized in my office as a 2022 change. So it's coming to you in this meeting. This abolish 1.0 FTE maintenance manager and creating the deputy, and then creating the 0.6 accounting specialist are all part of a larger plan. Or Jim, you want to just? I'll let Jim take it away.
Yeah, the change of these two positions is part of a larger succession plan I put together for the department. Lance, had me take a look at what our staff is at. And right now, 42% of our staff is over the age of 55, and in some areas, we're really lacking bench strength. So I went through each key position in management and took a look at things, how we're going. For the first position, we would be abolishing the maintenance manager and adding the deputy highway commissioner position. The person in that position right now is pretty much doing a lot of those duties right now without the title of doing that, and he does an excellent job at doing this. It will coordinate those people to do the projects a little bit more uniform. Right now, he's kind of busy with his duties, so we're going to shuffle some things around so he can coordinate those projects and make sure that they're done within standards and more uniform than we have been doing. That'll allow me to focus myself. We've been very fortunate over the last few years of getting a lot of state and federal projects. Between now and 2023, I have oversight of 12 different bridges and a $7 million Highway K project to accomplish. So I'm going to be taking some of those from Kevin so he can focus on the other department and getting all the maintenance done along with our paving. The other position that we talked about is creating a part-time accounting specialist, a 0.6 position. Right now, the bench strength for our accounting position is 1.0. We couldn't really be much lower than that. Our accounting for the highway department is kind of unique to the county. I just can't grab somebody from a different department and bring them down. Christie has some understanding of the complexity of the state programs, but Mary right now is the only person in there. She takes very little time off, and we have no backup, so we'd like to get some backup and a plan for her. So with it all being said, we do have some change due to retirement next year to cover these costs. So the overall administrative coordinator would move from 1.0 down to 0.8 with a savings of $19,273. The administrative specialist would go from 0.8 to 0.6 with a save of $29,067. The maintenance manager to the deputy highway director would be an increase of $51,32, and the new accountant specialist would be increase of $32,719. We'd actually have, after we would do all that, we'd actually have a net savings of $10,488 with increasing our bench strength and getting some backup people into key positions.
So are there any questions of Jim or Molly? Any questions? Any questions? All right, if not, we have two separate requests that are interrelated. Why don't we deal with them separately? So the first would be to abolish the maintenance manager and create the deputy director effective November 1st. What are the wishes of the committee?
McEwen, I'll make a motion to approve that.
Moved by
Leahy
McEwen,
will second.
moved by McEwen, seconded by Leahy. Any discussion? If
Mr.
not,
Chairman,
go ahead.
I understand that, that there are two different requests. However, I think, as we've just seen, they're interdependent upon each other in order to actually pay for themselves. So I would like to offer an amendment to the motion to approve both the abolish the maintenance manager and create the deputy director and create the .6 FTE accounting specialist together as one motion.
Okay, so it's basically taking the classification changes that are in there, what are the effective dates of those changes for the administrative coordinator and the administrative specialist?
Correct, those would be 2022 changes upon a retirement,
But
first
they're-
half of the year.
They're the funding mechanism for this proposal. So we need to, do we have a date?
It's in the first, not an exact date, but it's in the first half of 2022.
So you're asking, the problem is, I think as Chair Gibbs was pointing out, that you need the funding mechanism to be reflected in the motion. So are we looking at vacancies due to retirements and then refilling the positions at a lower level?
Yes.
In both cases?
Yes. Well, there's only one retirement. The other one is just an abolishment. Where there's actually one retirement, that person's gonna be refilled at a .8, and the person that's .8 is gonna go to .6 with a refill. So again, the cost savings is $10,488, and it should happen in the first half of 2022.
Just a question, John.
Yes.
Why would that not be just part of the build of the budget for 2022, then if it's all going to take effect in 2022?
We did have those positions part of the budget process also. The accounting specialist. Correct. Yes. We do have money in our existing budget to fund those at this time.
So then you are asking that they be effective for 2021
Yes.
within your own budget allocation, even though the result in 2022, when all of the changes are implemented, there would be a $10,000 net savings. So what is the increase then? Because there is a cost increase to the 2021, even though it's coming out of your budget. Am I correct?
Correct. I'd have to,
Is this on the agenda for tonight? I'm trying. No? Yes, it is.
Do you have any, Tim, do you have any positions that have been vacant? It's a budget neutral looking at.
we have not been full the entire year till 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago. So we've had empty positions the entire season.
But I thought that we had assumed that in some of our budget discussions, we're here in the sheriff's department, that we didn't budget for 100% complement.
We, with when we run PayPal, we budget for 100%.
The administrator said that the highway department and the sheriff's department were not budgeted for staffing at 100%. They were decreased by some 5%.
They were, but I believe, Jim, this year of any year that
Our
you've had
vacancies?
more vacancies than you've had in any other
At one point, we were down 3 to 4 positions.
And we basically took 1 to 1.5 positions away, and with the amount of turnover you have, I would bet $5 that
Yeah.
you're over that.
My reticence is that we've got a fiscal impact for this year being paid for out of next year's dollars. I don't know that we can do that. So we're looking at a November 1st effective date. If we dealt with this at September, we can still affect the change. I know it's cutting it closer, but I think we still have time, and I think we need to do it right. And then we can look at what the funding source would be.
What would you need from us? Just our budget report for our personnel?
I think what we would need to do is identify, I think as Kurt asked, there is a cost for moving from a maintenance manager to a deputy highway director, a 5% increase in 2021. We have to identify the source of that funding for 2021. The 2022 issues seem to be offsetting each other, and we can deal with that in the budget, but we don't have funding in 2021. So how do we get
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so you need to.
The 2021 cost of this would be $6,308.63.
We've had net savings of way more than that this year.
Only 6,000.
$6,308.63.
I think what's concerning to me, I don't think anybody's opposed to what we're trying to do. I think what we're concerned about is the logistics and the implementation and the practicality. We have to have the money in this budget, not in next year's budget, identified in the resolution. So, Christie, can you pull out your magic wand and give us that funding source?
That would come from Jim's office.
I mean, you have it in your personnel budget.
Yeah, I well over budget to the shortest.
Well, you would have a decrease in some position that was vacant, 6308, and now you would be increasing the pay and cost to a position, meaning the new manager position would be the increased cost, but it would come from the decrease in funding to a vacant position. So we've got to identify, in effect, what John's saying is we need to identify what that vacant position is that's generating the 6,308 that would have normally flowed over to fund balance at year end if that position remained vacant for the remainder of the, well, is vacant already, because we're really spending money that was allocated for somebody to be working. Correct?
Yeah, you just have to identify, it's like in 280, your admin person is in 265. You have to from and where it would be going to.
So let me ask the question again, are we ready for prime time tonight? If can we identify that source now? Because we'll need to amend the resolution tonight to reflect that funding source. Or we bring it back at September 21st. Well, the next couple of items require your attention, so we'll wait.
John, do you want us to withdraw my motion?
I don't have a second for Supervisor Gibbs' motion. I still have motion by McCune, seconded by Lee to abolish the maintenance manager and create deputy director. And I have an amendment by Gibbs and seconded, I do not have a second yet, to amend the motion to complete all of these changes in 2021. Oops.
And here, my concern is that we're making this contingent upon vacancies and other things with a date unknown. But what we're taking is the FTE complement, albeit 0.8, 0.6, 1, 0.8, and we're doing that today, but for a future date. And that creates from a where's the author, if we get audited and we say, where's the position authorization, once this resolution is adopted, that position authorization is reduced at 0.2. And so if we're paying somebody in that position at 0.8 and they're working, or they're 0.6 and they're working 0.8, we're going to shortchange that position. So we have to have the funding necessary for the FTE position assigned at the time that the motion creating it or deferring that to a point in the future. But then we have to calculate the cost based upon that assumed future date. I just am not sensing, Jim, I apologize, but I don't think we're ready for prime time tonight, given the uncertainty of the funding for the 2021 fiscal year. And we can still get it in, we can pass it on the 21st. Nobody's saying no to it, but we're saying procedurally, we haven't dotted all the i's.
Mr. Chairman, I'll withdraw my motion, and I think it spells it out clearly that, the effective date is 1/1 on the abolishment of the maintenance manager, and then the creation of the 0.6 FTE for accounting is also effective 1/1. But as you appropriately state, we haven't identified where those funds for that increase in cost for the deputy director, and we haven't identified the cost for the 2 months of salary for the 0.6 accounting specialist are coming from within the 2021 budget. The 2022 budget and FTE levels are a separate issue, and that can be dealt with in the budget for 2022. But until we've identified what positions were vacant and what monies we're going to utilize to pay for those costs on the maintenance manager elimination and the deputy director creation, and to create the 0.6 accounting specialist, especially if it's going to be effective 1/1/2021, we have to identify those sources, not just say, because otherwise we've actually spent, or in the budget, we spent those monies twice.
So, again,
Not spent, but we've allocated them to two different positions.
we have a November 1st implementation date. We have a September 21st county board meeting. We have a September 7th committee meeting. I would ask the committee if you would consider withdrawing the motion for the purposes of clarifying the funding for 2021, and we bring it back and get it passed in September.
Well, I'll make a motion to postpone until the next the HR Finance Committee meeting. That's a preferential motion.
Is there a second?
Fisher to second.
So you're not official until tonight at 7 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
So,
So,
moved by,
John,
go ahead.
yeah, so do we need to what about our motion? Just
You need-
Doesn't matter,
It's a
the
precedential.
motion to postpone is preferential.
Yeah, this supersedes your motion. So,
sounds good.
all those in favor of postponing this to the next meeting of the HR Finance Property Committee will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries ambivalently. Thank you, and I apologize, but I think we've got to get that worked out. And Michael, I see Mike nodding yes, and I'd hate to get audited and all of a sudden we're out of, we're raising some management flags for that. So let's go back up to the preliminary 2022 update on preliminary assumptions, general estimates, anything more in there?
No, the net new construction for Marathon County has come in, and we are, I gotta take my glasses off to even look at. We're at a little under 2% or 1.94%. That's the number that you're gonna use. It's a magical number for us, which determines the total increase in the levy. Operating levy doesn't include borrowing, it doesn't include bridge aid, but pretty much everything else that we do. So that's the number that you're going to use to figure out your increase in tax levy for 2022. Then, and if you look in the packet, if you live, whatever municipality you live in, you can look at. It's kind of interesting to see which ones are going up and by how much, and which ones have the highest increase. Remember that some are small, so a little bit of an increase makes it a bigger percentage than it would for a larger municipality. And with that, we've got net new construction, which we plug into our little spreadsheet to figure out where we're going to go with our 2022 budget. The next one that we have is the equalized value that we use for the apportionment of county taxes. Because TID districts are a special revenue generating item for development in municipalities, the total equalized value in the entire county has to be reduced by the amount of the TID increment, because that portion of the equalized value goes directly to the municipality. We get the base amount. This is the number that we're going to use for the bottom of the tax rate denominator. This is the total amount of property throughout the county that we will be able to levy a tax on. So consider all of us our municipality sitting out in the WebEx land or here, and each of us then would have a value associated with the property there, and then we will use the total amount of all of us to determine the amount that we are going to apportion to each one of us based on the equalized value of the municipality minus the TID increment. So that number, making it bigger on the screen won't make it any better, is 11,742,68.8. That's the number we put on the bottom of our little worksheet, so we start to look at how we can start putting our budget together. These all come out on August 15th. These are your TIDs. This is also interesting because you can see if there's a asterisk by it, the TID value went down. We still keep the base amount that we get to keep, but in some cases it will have gone down or is negligible. Again, and with that, we're going to put those numbers into our little worksheet. This is just a little worksheet we use to figure out where we're going to go with this. We have some other additional information that we need to receive from the state, including the personal property tax amounts and a worksheet. This is just a starting, so it's going to be estimate, but not the actual total dollar amount, but very close. We put our net new construction in here, 1.94. The amount that we're going to allocate over is the equalized value on the bottom. And with that, it looks like the increase in the operating levy, which includes all of our general fund, social improvement, capital improvement, and the 370,000 is really just in the general fund for some of the improvements we do around the county for, such as the courtrooms or some other small items that we have to get done, that don't rise to the level of being in a, project. And the highway less bridge aid, I estimated bridge aid for the highway department at 425,000 for 2022, which is a little over, I'm getting no from Jim, but that number will go up or down. Sorry. And with that, it looks like the number that we're looking at is increase in property taxes, maximum that we have in an increase of property taxes for operating only, not including debt service or bridge aid, is little under $1 million. It's 962,000, plus or minus a few little other things that the Department of Revenue will provide to us so that we can get that number in there, based on the closed TIDs and personal property taxes. So a little under $1 million is how much money we have to use to pay for tax levy supported operations within the county. Debt levy will go up a little bit, but that's based on the debt service schedules that we already have in place, less the payments from both the airport and the North Central Healthcare. And so your total levy in general is going to go up if everything else stays the same and not including ARPA lost revenue or any other grants or other items. Levy itself should go up a little under $1 million, but as you can see, this equalized value for apportionment is up by over, I think it's about 3%. The tax rate itself will still go down because the amount that you have to apportion to everybody, the dollar amount you have is 1.9%, but you're going to spread it out over a base that's a little over 3% of an increase. So that's what we have to work with when we start our budget. Work with the departments, which starts at the very end of this month.
So the effective tax rate goes down to 450, the mill rate.
In general, yep. Plus or minus some other little items that have to come into play.
I think not too long ago, I think when Kurt and I got on, it was 571.
Just of interest on the top here, it shows you what the net new construction has been for the last 3 years, and it's pretty stable. It was always hovering around 2% with a little over 2 for the last 2 years, and now just slightly under 2% for 2022.
All right, any questions? Questions?
Yeah, Supervisor Fisher here.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
So Christy, I was overlooking the by municipality rate changes, and just looking at City of Marshfield being at 12.23%. Is that number broken apart, or did they legitimately have 12% net new construction? It just seems so far out of reach of all the other ones.
The city of Marshfield is split between Marathon and Wood County, so in that case, I'm not sure if it's solely our portion of it and what was put in place there, or, and the only real super benefit is net new construction includes any tax TIF district construction, there's typically a lot of that within the municipalities, so I'm not sure if it's specifically to the Marathon County side or the city as a whole, and whether it's outside of a TIF or it's within one of their TIFs.
Okay, but that number then still rolls into the total of the 1.94%.
Correct.
Total increase. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the City of Marshfield is just the Marathon County portion.
Yep, yes.
And Jonathan, the reason you might see that significant growth is that's where a lot of their commercial district is. So that's where the construction, that's where their growth is in their commercial buildings.
So we get to essentially take advantage of just simply the geography of where the county line draws down.
Exactly right.
Okay.
And if you look at it, almost 13% of that is in the TIF section, in the TIF district.
So any other questions? If not, thank you for that update. So now we'll move on to intergovernmental budget transfers.
We don't have any.
I didn't think I saw any in there.
Sorry. There are no budget transfers.
So now then we'll move on to item 6, policy issue discussion and committee determination discussion of long-term capital planning and the 2022 KIP. I think what we are hoping to get out of today's discussion is just to see if there are concerns relative to any of the proposed maintenance projects, and then they have a discussion on the items under 2A, B, and C to see if there are any concerns there moving forward, so we can begin the process of filling in some of the blanks for the KIP plan going forward. Terry, you're still on?
Yes, we are.
Do you want to just give us a high-level overview of the maintenance projects?
I should have picked you up a little bit there. Let me just take a look.
Are you looking for the new requested ones, or are you looking for the full list of maintenance, end-of-life, and regulatory projects?
Looking for a high-level overview of the one that makes sense. I think we're looking for the,
Terry, I think on maintenance projects, we can go through those quickly, which is the top 4 sections that are presented here, which would be the projects not
yeah.
funded in CIP, rolling stock, reoccurring, and then just in general, the tech projects, be everything above informational only. And I can start out with a highway department. And Jim is still here, but what happens is through Jim's, he has bituminous bridge and road projects. And once we get into the 2022 budget, he'll be providing those numbers for us. And one highlight I'd like to make, because this question comes up quite frequently, where does my county wheel tax go? It's not its registration fee, but it goes to offset the cost. Oops. Of bituminous resurfacing. And and I'm looking at Jim still here, but it's usually anywhere from about $6.5 to $7 million a year, correct? Overall, and so proportionately half of that funding for strictly bituminous is being funded directly from that registration, vehicle registration fee. So if that question comes up quite a bit, it doesn't go anywhere else. It stays there to offset approximately half of the cost of the bituminous, but those numbers will be coming in as we go through the budget process. Reoccurring projects, there's 2 technology and for the facilities capital management parking lots. And you can see those as stating reoccurring as well. And those are things such as the laptops that you see here, the phones that you see, the hardware and other hardware-related phones and those types of associated pieces of equipment. And we have we just do the replacements of those. So it depends on the department or what replacement schedule they have at IT. But those are all reoccurring along with the rolling stocks, which we had discussed both in July and August meetings. And those are those that meet the requirements of rolling stock as per our CIP guidelines. And with that, then I think
we're into some of the longer informational only, which gets into the new highway facility, Forensics Science Center in design, which I think we'll talk about it at a future meeting. So the next three items were the ones where Administrator Leonard had wanted us to just see if there were some concerns, because in light of the presentation that we had from Mr. Godorzi earlier, do we want to, are you comfortable with sort of making a determination that in principle we are supportive of those moves? One would be social services from Thomas Street to the North Central Healthcare Facility. The other would be to transfer the conference centers from River Drive to the Lakewood Drive campus. And then finally, it would be the parking lots at the Lakeview Drive campus. Any thoughts on that? That's predicated upon a move and vacating the property. We've been talking about that. We don't have the county's master plan done yet, but these are not new topics for many of us. It does not deal with the issue of what do we ask for when we sell those buildings, social services or River Drive. This just is sort of a reflection of where, in general terms, we want to go as the property side of this committee in terms of managing our facilities and moving those facilities. So with that, are there any thoughts on the social services move? Any concerns with that? Again, moving from Thomas to the healthcare center?
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Go ahead.
Sure. The one thing that I think is clear is, it makes the most sense to bring social services down here. The clientele, in some cases, are moved to NCAC, and we have, as the 3-year project starts to wind down on the renovation for NCHC, moving social services down here for some of the same clientele interactions makes the most sense, and that then effectively frees up that space. I know it's a big cost. That renovation is $6.7 million, or estimated right now at $6.7 million. But at the same token, it'll be offset by, at some point, the potential future sale of that project on Thomas Street right now.
Any other thoughts on the social service move? And I just reiterate Kurt's points that many counties have gone to a human service model where they combine and coordinate the mental health, human health, and social services departments in one. But irrespective of that decision, the chance for collaboration and cooperation is significant, and by putting them in one facility, I think it improves the potential for a continuum of care as you move through outpatient services, inpatient services, to social services support for families, and some of the health-related activities. So it does make sense to make that move.
John, this is Craig.
Go ahead.
I know when we discussed this before, there was the issue with the lease with the credit union, which I think they just renewed a 10-year lease. Is that going to, how do we plan on dealing with that, I guess?
I believe Administrator Leonard has had some preliminary discussions. I know that when we were talking about the potential for the Community Partners Campus to be in that building, that there were efforts to try and find a suitable location. I don't know what the status of those are. We can find out at the next meeting.
That'd be great. And then I'm assuming there would be an expense to the county to do that.
Probably a fair assumption.
Terry does have a comment about that. John?
We did work with the credit union a little bit on this to this point, and currently
they're looking at putting a smaller, like a branch office in the conference center area that we're talking about down in the old pool. So that was one of theirs, but they would still like to go somewhere in a county building for their main credit union. But they didn't seem to have any issues with relocating if they had to.
Any other?
Chair Robinson, Supervisor Fisher here.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
I think really as we move forward with this idea of collapsing some of these facilities together, even though we do have the costs that would be associated with the renovation now to expand out the space, I think it would behoove us to continue very much staying ahead of getting the facilities that we can consolidated as best as we can. To, at this point, if we can lower the overall footprint, that's just in the long run going to just reduce cost as we move forward. And I would definitely like to continue to see those buildings consolidated. Thank you.
Are you, Supervisor Robinson, are you asking for a yes or no tonight? Because I have the spreadsheet.
Chris is just asking if we should ask for a yes or no. I think what I'd like to do is try to get a preliminary approval, understanding that the final KIP is the final KIP. So maybe, do you want to deal with these individually, or do you want to deal with them collectively on those three items that Lance was looking for? Why don't we deal with them collectively once we complete?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we support the 3 new projects that are under the new projects requested as they're spelled out in the proposed 2022 CIP project request sheet.
Is there a second?
Fisher to second.
Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries. Then I think we were looking at the maintenance and end-of-life regulatory projects to just see if there were any concerns relative to those as we advance those through the budget process. I don't know that we need a motion at this time.
If there's anything that they do not want to do.
Yes.
Or if they want to, because I'm going to start
I know that there are some discussions that are supposedly taking place between Troy and the city relative to the water meter project and options that may reduce that cost. But are there any other questions? We've got.
I do have one comment that we do have pending on the financial HR ERP system. Jerry will be providing you information on that for your next meeting. As we talked about in the August 10th meeting, we have a timetable for approval of that, and that is in September. So that number is pending our final conversations with Collaborative Solutions and Workday. So it's it's a close number, but isn't the exact one, and you'll be provided that September when we have all of our final discussions.
I'm just going to raise a personal concern relative to the last 2 items on there, relative to the elevator modernization and the wall covering replacement at UWMC, also known as UW Stevens Point, Wausau. But I still think we need a long-term commitment from UWSP and the UW system relative to that campus, because we keep every year being asked to put several $100,000 into that building without any known or any formal commitment to the future. So I would hope that we would continue to work toward a long-term agreement with the university system on the use of that property, so that we're not making investments that would be short-lived in context of them using the facility. I don't have any reason to think that they would close it down, but the system is losing population, and decisions are made sometimes hastily. So we may need to explore where we are with those discussions. Anything else that people are concerned about? If not, we'll relay that information to Lance, and Christie obviously can carry that message. All right. That completes the discussion on the 6A. The next meeting is September 7th. We will obviously deal with the Highway Department changes and the ARPA updates, and as well as that's our normal business meeting. I think we'll continue the discussion on the KIP and other things. Anything else that you would like to see on the agenda for the next meeting? Anything else? Are you seeing? All right, if not, that meeting is again September 7th at 3:30. Is there anything else to come before us? If not, we are adjourned. I'm sorry?
I do have one announcement. The Portage County Finance Committee cannot meet on the date, September 28th date. I believe we have a tentative different date. It will be a WebEx at 5 o'clock, I believe, on Monday. I'll take a look. You will have your 4 o'clock September 28th educational meeting, and that will be changed probably to the Employee Resources room here, as long as we can get the live feed to go as well. And we will get you that new 5 o'clock joint Finance Committee meeting that we have in order to approve the airport's budget. But you will have your meeting on the 28th. It will not be at the airport, and it will be at 4 o'clock, and we will get you the logistics for the 5 o'clock joint Finance Committee meeting to approve the airport's budget as well.
All right, anything else come before us? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you. Did you have anything?
I'm not sure what was going on. I got here with the opening statements, you know.
The public comment?
I didn't even know the way it was going. I didn't think it was relevant.
Oh,
He kind of goes, I don't know what was going on. You know, I've never been to a meeting like this. It's a long story, so I didn't want